It all started in 2019 when unknown underground structures suddenly emerged out of nowhere. Inside these labyrinths, armies of several countries were sent to expedition. In these dungeons, countless monsters and treasures lie, with the existence of levels, status screens, and other game-like settings that make these dangerous labyrinths look more like a fantasy game. After their existence, a new era began for humanity, which ignites flames of war among countless countries to seize control of treasures and valuable resources that lay inside the dungeon. Due to the war, this Herculean task of venturing and exploring the dungeons was left in the hands of qualified civilians who are also known as adventurers. In 2024, Japanese government passed a new law that allowed everyone to venture and explore dungeons. In the year 2028, the tale of our high schooler protagonist Takagi Kato started, who is exploring the first floor of the dungeon. Like a snake, Kato was lying in wait for his target to reach closer to him so he could ambush and attack it at a close range. As the slime got closer, Takagi jumped and surprised the little guy with its attack. The slime almost got a heart attack with his surprise. Before the little guy could do something, Kato delivered fatality to slime by showering and poisoning it with bug spray. After learning their weakness, he didn't consider them a threat. With a satisfied and calm look, he watched slime death with every breath it took. But it's not over yet. In his finest hours, the slime swears his vengeance against Kato and gathers his remaining energy to bounce and jump on all the walls, and strike with an impact like a wrestler punch between his guts and balls, blowing his light out. The fight ended as Kato was the winner after the slime death. The magic shard came out from the slime body and Kato hurriedly collected it. To sell it in the market, there are many valuable magic shards that monsters drop after their death, but slime shards are the most common ones. When Kato was resting to recover from the slime attack, he saw a light and heard a strange sound that came out from his body. With excitement, Kato checked his status and joyed after leveling up. It's been 2 years since he became an adventurer, and finally his fruits of killing slime is paying off. Even though he holds the lowest rank for now, but he believed and dreamed to become one of the strongest adventurers in the future, and proposed to someone that he loves secretly. He was pumped up after leveling up and decided to challenge the next floor. As he walked and descended deeper into the second floor, which was filled with goblins and humanoid monsters, he was dumbstruck when encountered goblins close at the gate. The goblins looked like time-traveled prehistoric caveman ancestors with their Ooga Booga language. With caution, he approached close to goblins, and thought that the situation is difficult for a noob adventurer like him, especially dealing with 2 goblins at the same time. Looking at both of them, he thought, can he beat them solo? He was more dumbfounded when looked at piles of trash and equipments behind them. These goblins are more like gangsters and thieves, as they are camping at close to the second floor of the dungeon entrance to loot and mug the people in the dungeon, but the goblins don't mind as they were having fun with smoking cigarettes and chewing gums. Kato took a sword stance and tried to act like a hero in front of them. He took a deep breath with a serious look and decided to teach these worthless pieces of trash a life lesson. As a raging tiger attacks, he rushes toward goblins to beat the shit out of them, but a minute later Kato was lying on the ground, beaten by the goblins and spitting blood from his mouth. Even the goblins said in their Ooga Booga language, "Know your place, trash." After gotten beaten up by them, Kato realizes that goblins are strong, but the goblins continued their beating as they consider Kato their training dummy. All the odds were against him, but the Lady of Luck took a pity on him. As the goblins got distracted and started to fight against each other for the Kato wooden sword, when he saw the goblins are fighting and robbing each other, he took this chance as an opportunity to escape from there. Kato retreats to the first floor by saying he underestimated the strength of the goblins and thought that he is going to die today, and which idiot spread this rumor that goblins are weak small fries. After retreating, boy swears revenge against the goblins with his crackling broken bones. Somehow Kato was able to reach back to the Adventurers Guild, generally referred to as Adventurers' Marketplace. Inside the guild, there are few adventurers who were talking with each other as the guy congratulated his fellow adventurer for reaching the 5th floor of the dungeon. The adventurer replied to his collage that he grinded himself back to the 4th floor, and he didn't mind the pace at all. His girlfriend said in a little bit annoyed tone, "You are saying it like you have achieved this feat alone." He apologized and said that he can't do it alone without her girlfriend. He looked at them and said, "Maybe I should form a party with you guys instead of hanging out with the random thugs." As the adventurers continued their conversation, Kato passed close to them and sat close on the other couch parallel to them. The adventurers look at him and started to talk about Kato. They look at his body wounds and wondered what kind of life and death situation Kato faced inside the dungeon. Their curiosity increased as they wondered and considered Kato a high-ranked adventurer who must have explored deepest floors of the dungeon, without knowing the truth that he got his ass kicked by goblins in the dungeon and ran back home. But they imagined him as a gold-rank adventurer who must have solely ventured and explored maybe 20 or maybe 30 floors of the dungeon. Nope, but in truth, he is a wood-rank adventurer who makes others feel good thanks to his rank. The adventurer's talk was more like rubbing salt in Kato's wounds, as he recalled his fight with goblins and thought that goblins possess both strength and intellect. The more he remembered it, the more he became depressed. Kato felt like a defeated hero. Emitting a dark and gloomy aura from his body, he screamed and shouted deep in his heart that there's no way a high schooler could manage that alone. But the adventurer girlfriend thought and suggested his party members, and said, guys, if we ask a hero like him nicely, then he may help us with the 5th floor of the dungeon. With teary eyes and deep in his heart he begged them to please don't do it, as no chance in hell he could have met their expectations. As the adventurer girlfriend went closer and closer to Kato to ask for help, the guild receptionist made an announcement and said, "Number 45, make your way to counter 3. After hearing the announcement, Kato stood up from the couch energetically and said, "Thank God I'm saved, and yes, I'm on my way to counter 3 and leave as fast as he could with the help of his cane." But deep in his heart he was frustrated by others in his surroundings because of the privileges they enjoyed in their life as adventurers. Tears ran down from his eyes as he was trying to hide his frustration and jealousy by saying that I'm not jealous and angrier to anyone. After reaching to counter 3, like a heartbroken veteran hero, Kato sat in front of her and thought to sell these shards quickly and went home. She looked at him with her bouncy chest and said, "You have it rough, Takagi." Just one bounce, just one boing of her chest was enough to exorcise the dark, gloomy aura from him. Hitsugaya began to cheer up his spirits through her secret talk no jutsu and boing chest technique, though the man who was frustrated by his defeat with a broken heart and dark aura begins to motivate and cheered in his life again thanks to Hitsugaya chest and her conversation. She apologized and showed gratitude to Kato for reporting this incident, and she is happy that he came back alive. But Kato doesn't mind as his brain was fixed on something else. Deep in his heart he said to himself, "They are huge and bouncy." As her chest bounced even more, a sparkling light aura began to come out from Kato as he thought that she is pretty today as well. But Hitsugaya warned him and said it's dangerous to go solo in the dungeon and it's more threatening to challenge new floors solely. But Kato was spaced out in his ARA Hitsugaya imagination. She called Kato and he was shocked by her call and said, "So what just did you say?" Kato immediately grasped the situation and said, "Even if you say it like this, there is no one he can go with." Hitsugaya replied, "All solo adventurers say that, and it would be a different story if they are using servants," and also repeated her warning to Kato. Hitsugaya explains more about the servants and says they are summoned warriors or monsters that fight for you, and there is only a 1% chance that a monster drops a rare card that can be used for servant summoning. And the servants can vary from goblins to ancient dragons, and there is a rare chance to summon overpowered angles also. Kato's curiosity touched its peak and he asked, "If I get my hands on them, then can I explore solo with her in the dungeon and can do anything?" She said yes and told him if you got your hands on them and sold them in an auction, then you can become a billionaire overnight. Hitsugaya ended the conversation and handed him his reward money. Kato sighed in disappointment and said deep in his heart this is the fruit of his slime killing for an entire month, and this month would be tough for him. He thanked Hitsugaya-san and left in disappointment by sighing, which made Hitsugaya worried. She called him and said with a cheerful ARA smile, "Don't get disappointed and it's all right to do things at your pace." Her words touched Kato hard as he looked up to her. But the adventurer girlfriend intervenes and pointed at him by saying, "There he is, our hero, and can we talk for a moment?" But Kato ran as fast as he can with his injured leg. After reaching home in his bedroom, he checked his mobile phone to search for rare drops in a dungeon, and sees that slimes don't drop anything rare, and the rare drop rate is around 1 to 3% in the entire dungeon, and the rare drop items include high-level potions, magic orbs and equipments and jellies that can increase your ability points. Kato lay in his bed and wished to get a powerful dragon servant who could even defeat the demon lord also, instead of a weak goblins. Sometime later he went to sleep to dream about his servant and to recover wounds with good night's sleep. 3 months later Kato finally hit the dungeon after getting fully recovered from his wounds, and started his dungeon adventure by hunting down slimes with his bug spray, who was walking like a itsy-bitsy spider, and it is his second prey of the day. He is happy to hunt down his 2 preys in such a short time and decided not to be careless anymore. But then he hears footsteps. Something was coming out from the darkness. Its body became illuminated and visible through the light inside the dungeon. Finally, the monster showed himself, and it was a rainbow-color slime with legs, a slime that never has been seen before. Even Kato has never encountered a slime like this before. Kato was dumbfounded when slime appeared behind him like a Batman as it was standing in front of him few seconds before. The slime moved his legs so faster that it can even beat Zenitsu with his breathing style and started to circle around Kato by saying catch and beat me if you can, human trash, which makes it harder to even keep eyes at him. The slime took advantage of his speed and landed attack after attack in his body and gut, which felt like Mike Tyson punches to him. Thanks to slime's speed, Kato wasn't able to land a hit on a slime as it dodged Kato attacks like a fly. The slime was stepping up his game and moving even faster than before. Growing frustrated by this, Kato used his dual-wielder special technique and sprayed the entire hall, which eventually took down the slime and defeated it. But the technique has its own price, which leads Kato to cough and vomits after spitting so much and after covering the entire hall with the bug spray. After getting hang of himself, he turned around and saw an item the slime had dropped. He carefully went close to the card and collected his reward. It was a card with an angelic image and the name of Angle was Sylphie. Kato was looking at a card with so much serious looks that his guts are telling him that it's one of the God-class servant cards. His curiosity rocketed sky high when he thought about it, and couldn't keep it with himself and shouted with excitement, "Here I come 1 billion," and started to run and jump with joy. On that day the guild received complaints about a weirdo and suspicious guy who was running and jumping in the dungeon. With emanating a strange shriek, Kato went inside first floor altar hall and began to meditate to calm himself down and to better think about the situation. Carefully for once he thought to appraise it from the guild, but it could be dangerous as many people would come for his life. As he was holding 1 billion yen in his hand, he started to daydream about Sylphie after looking at her status and her beautiful face, and imagined like a gentle big sister type or an ARA of her dreams. His dreams started to look more like Michelangelo painting rather than a dream, but then he remembers Hitsugaya words about the servants that if any person summon a servant then it lose its market value, and Kato thought in his mind about to take Sylphie or 1 billion yen. For Kato, it was like to be or not to be. After giving it some thought he made his decision to summon Sylphie. Kato placed his card on his forehead and ordered Sylphie to come at him. Suddenly a magic circle was formed under his feet with a glowing light coming out from the circle illuminating the entire room, as it became its sole desire to summon and venture into the wonders that are hidden in the dungeon. Without knowing, he was about to get a deep surprise from his choice. The magic circle stopped glowing and Kato wondered that he had done the summoning in the right way and thought, why didn't Sylphie show up? The very next thing that happened made Kato's jaw drop. When he looked up and saw something was emerging from the roof of the dungeon with pair of wings and a gigantic beautiful body with a chest that could even be considered as a rival to the Statue of Liberty and can easily take her place. With an angelic face even Kato couldn't keep up and said whoa in wonder. And then Sylphie landed inside a dungeon with her humongous body that causes such great impact around Kato's surroundings that he can even feel it after she lands. Dust started to fly and spread in the air. A flash came out which blinded Kato for some time. After the dust and flash disappeared, Kato looked at the roof and the surroundings of dungeon hall in wonder and thought, where did she go? But got even more surprised when saw a strange little girl was standing in front of him. Kato in surprise looked at his surroundings again to see where did she go. He asked the little girl who was standing in front of him, did she see a beautiful lady floating in the air a minute ago? The girl pointed the hand to herself. Kato laughed off and said, you are saying you are the one that I summoned, and says it's not good to lie, little lady. The girl holds her chest and shows her melons to Kato to prove her identity. He compliments her, saying those melons are big and beautiful for a lowly, but her servant is a young beautiful S-rank woman with a different size than her. The girl spoke in a sweet and formal tone that it's not a lie, master, and I have come because you summoned me. And from now on I will do my best to serve you. Sylphie's child face was so cute that Kato can't help but admired her beauty and thought that she is like the younger and light version of her summoned servant. And she doesn't look like a normal human with those cute tiny wings on her back, and she is her summoned servant. Perfect for someone who loves lollies, and she is also a rare S rank too. Sylphie became shocked and thought what just happened when Kato suddenly collapsed and heartedly said, this is not what I expected at all. My ARA dream sank like a Titanic and the chance of getting 1 billion had flushed away. Do you even know 1 billion yen is 100,000 notes of 10,000 yen from the Bank of Japan? I should have considered more seriously about this matter. Sylphie asked in worried tone. Is something wrong with me, master? Kato brushed off his hair and said, there is nothing wrong with you. It's my illness known as 1 billion seizures. When I felt greedy about money, Sylphie was dumbstruck and started to wonder about 1 billion seizures diseases. Something like this exists in this world, Sylphie said with care and in affectionate eyes with sparkling ARA ARA. Please leave everything on me, as from now on I will take care of things for you, and it would be bad if you collapse again. Sylphie's words melted his heart as he was ashamed of his behavior and thought she really cared about me, and here I'm just thinking about the money. Kaio grabbed his stomach and said like a comedian, my heart hurts from this 1 billion yen disease, which surprised Sylphie again. She asked to master, is your 1 billion seizures disease acting up again? And don't die on me, master. But he said it's all right now and her disease has been resolved by her overload cuteness. Just like a cute puppy, Kato pat on her head and said his Chunibeo dream is more important than 1 billion yen, as he won't regret it. He bent on his knees and proposed to her by saying, it's nice to meet you, Sylphie. But Sylphie was flustered and blurted out like a surrender saying, you don't have to kneel, master, it's unacceptable. After their master and servant drama was over, Sylphie took Kato to the next location where his next prey was located. Thanks to her enhanced senses, she easily pinpoints the location of her enemies. And if it's on Kato, then it would take an hour to hunt down a slime, but if I know my enemy position, then I can easily track and defeat them. Kato was thankful for Sylphie's monster detection ability. In curiosity, he checked her status, even though she is a level 1 lowly, but her battle points were through the roof, which surprised Kato. Battle points are one of the most important statuses for dungeon exploration, as they represent an individual fighting and their physical powers. Right now Kato possesses 10 battle points even though he is on level 3, but this cute adorable loli possesses 170 battle points, which are not less than a cheat skill. After all, she is a god-type Valkyrie, but the information and picture on the card are suspicious. The skill monster detection isn't even on the card and thought, can I trust her or not? As Kato was talking to himself, Sylphie turned around and said, master, we are going to encounter a monster soon right after this corner. Sylphie smiled, hiding her true intentions by saying deep in her heart, I will show you that what I truly am, master. Kato agreed and said okay, as he wanted to see what Sylphie could do in a fight, but think walking with an adorable loli in the dungeon wouldn't make other adventurers suspicious, and what would happen if people reported that I'm using a loli to go in the dungeon with me? When he is thinking about this trouble, Sylphie called him and said, I had found it, master. Kato is dumbstruck by her monster detection ability, and like a wolf, both of them are peeking at the little itsy bitsy slime to kill it. Kato looked at her and asked if it's all right to leave things on you. He looked at Sylphie and she was hyped like a dog to destroy the slime. After seeing her peaked excitement, Kato allowed her and asked, would you like to use bug spray for murder? Sylphie said she didn't need a bug spray because she was going to kill him in her way. She jumped and dashed like a lion who came out of hiding to hunt down his prey. Slime was surprised as it wondered what was going to happen next. Kato was standing behind Sylphie and watching her battle like a responsible big brother who would jump and save her if things got dangerous. With a gentle expression and voice, Sylphie said, here I go, but her gentle voice suddenly changed into a murderous tone as she looked at Slime and said, now die by my hands. By summoning her divine lightning with a magic circle on the roof, she felt invincible and atomic like Sid. Slime luck ran out, as it got electrocuted and roasted by Sylphie lightning. The impact of the lightning was so strong that Kato could fly off at any moment, as his feet were weak and can't hold for much longer. As the lightning was passing through Slime, I think he was like this and said in his Ooga Booga language, what happened? I was just passing through. And where did this lightning suddenly come from? And who is that mad loli? As the lightning got stronger, Slime not only got burned to ashes but got nuked and roasted to its death. But Kato's feet couldn't hold anymore as he flew off like Courage the Cowardly Dog and got stuck to one of the dungeon wall like a fly who got hit by a high-speed car on a highway and got stuck on the car windscreen. After experiencing her power on first hand, he said this loli power is incredible, as he was getting crushed by her lightning force as he got a jaw-dropping reaction with her insane lightning voltage. But it's not over yet for Kato and the slime. As Sylphie was standing in her battlefield against the slime, she draws an envelope lightning in her hand as lightning started to change its shape into a lance with her serious murderer expression like a saber. As the lightning completely changed its shape into her divine lance rise and she points her lance at the slime core like a sniper. Kato jaw drop reaction increases. He asked, is she not done yet with the slime? Sylphie nukes the slime with her spear. A terrifying sound comes out from the slime core that freaks out Kato. He thinks that slime has already turned into ashes, not only into ashes but got vaporized by Sylphie attacks. And isn't she doing overkill? Thanks to her lightning attack, the dungeon floor was destroyed as one piece of stone flew and hit straight on Kato's face, and he thought she did all this just by throwing her spear at it. On the other floor of dungeon, adventurers were terrified by the sound of Sylphie attack as they thought an earthquake came and the sound came from the upper floor. They were worried and thought, isn't the dungeon going to collapse or anything, right? They decided to collect the magic shards from the dead monsters and then went back to the guild immediately. Sylphie sighed a relief after she was done nuking the slime. She looked at her master Kato and he was lying on the ground unconsciously. She began to think that how coward these slimes are attacking from her blind spot on her master, without knowing the truth that she did this as Kato thought. Is it a comedy sketch or a joke? After regaining consciousness, Kato said, like Master Ogwe, I feel like my time has come early as a goner. Sylphie flustered again and apologized soothingly as she had done something which cannot be undone, and of all things, I had injured my master. She bowed her head down to apologize, but deep in her heart she was getting crushed by guilt and regret as she felt like a failure in front of Kato after injuring her. After seeing the guilt and regret on Sylphie's face, he cheered up Sylphie's spirits and said, I told you to do your best and you did what I said, right? And the responsibility lies on me, and you are not a failure as a servant. But Sylphie said, it's not your fault, master. Kato interfered in her conversation and said, like a dio, I have seen enough. I'm satisfied and servants obey their masters, right? Then you are a success instead of a failure, and won't you believe in your master's words? Kato touched her heart as her mood cheered up. Sylphie took her hand and said, I believe in my master's words. Sylphie is blessed by his master, as he repairs his broken relationship with her and introduces each other once again. After their master and servant love drama was over, they went close to the dungeon area where Sylphie had nuked the slime and thought it was seriously powerful to cause this amount of damage, and the status screen showing 170 BP was not joking around but being modest, huh? Indeed, she is a god-type servant and I have to show more respect to her. But looking at Sylphie's face, she looked more like a dog who was happy that her master praised me, and dungeon destruction is not my fault. Sylphie was surprised and felt something was wrong with her body. A loud noise came like a dragon roar which shocked Kato. The noise started to hurt his ear as it grew louder. Sometime later, as the noise started to become dimmer and dimmer, Kato was worried, looked behind, and to see if it was an enemy attack or from where is this voice coming. He found the source of the noise. It was coming from Sylphie's stomach, but to hide her embarrassment like a little child, Sylphie said, what noise? I can't hear anything at all. Sylphie collapsed when she was trying to hide her embarrassment and made a hole with her face in the dungeon floor. Kato shot loudly when she collapsed with the last remaining energy. Sylphie said, it's embarrassing, but I have used all my energy to nuke the slime to its death. Now I'm really hungry and low on battery, and this noise is coming from my stomach and I'm about to be collapsed. But Kato dumbfoundedly said, you are already collapsed. That day an urban legend was created inside a dungeon which became the talk in the Adventurers Guild, that an unknown voice was heard from the first floor of a dungeon which made adventurers panic as they ran in fear by that noise. A few months later, Sylphie was having dinner in the dungeon with Kato, watching her enjoy eating magic shards with her adorable face. Kato asked in surprise, do monster magic shards taste good? On her very first day, she ran out of gas after using too much strength to nuke the slime. But Sylphie expressed her reaction like Saber and said, I feel alive again. Watching her cute face and satisfied look, Kato found out and concluded that magic crystals are the only way to satisfy both her hunger and to increase her power. After done with dinner, they resumed their journey to hunt the slime again. On their way, Kato remembered what Miss Hitsugaya told him about servants, which concerns him about Sylphie. Whenever she gets hungry or runs out of gas, she will collapse. When he was thinking about this, Sylphie called him and said, I found them. Kato said to leave the rest to me and admire her monster detection ability as it was handy. The slime was playing and bouncing without knowing it was the last time it would bounce again and the danger that was about to fall on him. Being with Sylphie, he thinks about his past self and that it would take 1 hour solely to hunt down one slime, but being with her, my pace improved a lot. He felt the greatest blessing of being with her. When he was thinking about these things, Sylphie interrupted him and said, I felt another monster close by. But Kato was looking at her face and said deep in his heart, I worked solo for 2 years without knowing that it can be fun to talk and walk with someone close to you. In surprise, Sylphie also looks at Kato's face and tries to browse the situation in her mind that what he is thinking. She called him to ask, but Kato replied, it's nothing, let's move further. As he wanted to show gratitude to Sylphie, after being done with slimes, they took a break. Kato showed him the amount of magic crystal that they had gathered in the 3 months, and today they even broke their own record by hunting more 8 slimes in 1 hour, but Sylphie was acting more like Saber the lion. as her mind was fixed on food making her drooling in front of her. Kato understood and said, "Fufu, are you wondering how are we going to split it? Of course I will give you plenty of them to eat." It became like a comedy drama when Sylphie tried to act like an ARA and declined by saying, "You have gathered these crystals by putting your life on the line and I'm fine with the same amount of food I'm getting to work." But Kato said, "I earned this much thanks to you and your monster detection ability help and there's no need to hold back, just take it." But the drama continued as Sylphie acted more like a responsible ARA and dramatically said, "No master, stop," and stopped Kato with her hands by saying with a cuteness overload expression, "Those who don't fight they shouldn't eat." Sylphie cuteness overloads when she crosses her arms and hands, shaking her head like a cute puppy to say stop. "And I'm still a Valkyrie, if I can't fight then I won't accept it." Watching her act like that makes Kato think that servants also hold strange convictions, huh? There's a reason that I can't allow Sylphie to fight with the slimes, because her divine lightning is strong enough to turn any into ash and it also destroys the monster crystal, which won't be helpful. She can also fight without skills too, however, it won't look good to make a little girl fight and do his dirty work to kill the slimes by giving her instructions from the rear. Putting her to search helps me a lot as he delivers fatality with his bug spray poison on slimes and he thinks to give her a chance in the lower levels of the dungeon. When he was getting worried about these problems, a level up came just like he hoped for with a new skill, Slime Slayer, given to those who kill extreme numbers of slimes. Instead of like a servant, Sylphie acted more like a cute loli congratulating his master for a new skill. For some reason, Kato looked at her and said, "Let's call it a day." Sylphie became dumbfounded by his master's request. She asked, "Aren't we ending earlier than usual?" Kato replied, "I think we should prepare for tomorrow," but Sylphie didn't get it and tried to browse in her mind what master just said with a question mark on her head. The next day Kato summoned Sylphie with a magic circle formed on the ground from which Sylphie popped up floating in the air with the light emanating from her body. She landed on the ground thanking her master for summoning her. Watching how she emerged from the magic circle made Kato's heart race. He was excited to see that today she would appear in her giant ARA body. Sylphie became astonished when she looked at the master and blurted out saying in an energetic lowly tone, "Master, you look amazing today, and what's the with the new shield?" Kato thought, "Really?" and said it's some basic equipment that he could buy within his budget. With a cheerful and energetic smile, Sylphie expressed and said, "We are going to hunt slimes more efficiently now." But Kato said, "Not today, because we are going to hunt some other monsters today than slime, as it is time to move on and challenge the second floor." They descended and went to the second floor like a birthday party girl. Sylphie was excited because it was her first time exploring a new floor. For Kato, he wanted to avoid the goblins who ambushed him last time on the second floor. He called Sylphie and asked her, "Is it alright if you watch me back again?" She looked at him with a smile and said okay. Deep in his heart he apologized to her and thought that he would allow Sylphie to let herself loose on the deepest floors of the dungeons. Kato went into his Goblin Slayer mode for his revenge for what goblins did to him last time. The second floor was a little bit darker than the first floor, with a pile of trash lying at one side of the wall, but this time the goblins weren't there. Sylphie called him and said, "I feel the monster's presence close to us." Kato agreed as he had the same mutual feeling as Sylphie. The more he got close to the pile of trash, the more his body started to sweat, and his legs were shaking from the flashback of his past battle memories. Without knowing what was going on with him, he started to shake like a car revving engine. But it felt more like being in a blender and then someone forgot to turn the switch off. Shivers went down in his spine, which made him think to head back to the first floor. But Sylphie comforted him by bringing her melons close to his body and said, "Master, are you okay? Are you feeling uneasy?" and said in a worried tone, "Or could it be your 1 billion diseases are striking back?" Kato called her name, took a deep breath, calmed himself down, and said, "It's fine, and I would show any monster who is the real man here." Sylphie can't help herself but look at her master and wonder with satisfaction and awe. The drama ended and they got back on their search for monsters. As previously, Sylphie mentioned that she was sensing monsters close to them but can't pinpoint their exact location, and there was nothing more than a trash in front of them. As they were about to leave for the search of surrounding areas, a voice came from behind them. Something was moving inside the trash. Before that thing could do something, Kato attacked the trash, but to his surprise, it was nothing, just a rat, without knowing that the real danger was about to fall on them. Time-traveled caveman goblins were back and were hanging on top of the roof like monkeys with the help of stalactite to ambush anyone who got close to their treasure, or precisely the trash they collected on the second floor. Kato got close and decided to take a deep look inside the trash to see if there is any threat or not. Suddenly Kato heard a voice with a few pieces of stalactite fallen from the roof which grabbed his attention. He looked up and saw caveman goblins attacking from above like a skydiver. The goblins said in their Ooga Booga language, "Surprise idiot, now die by our hands." But this time Kato was prepared as he blocked their attack with the help of his shield and avoided to get injured and failing the goblin ambush attack. He peeked from the side of his shield and saw his old wooden stick in their hand, which drove Kato mad as he went into full goblin slayer mode to take his revenge on the goblins who beat him up. Looking at how her master was getting overwhelmed by the goblins' attack, Sylphie was about to burst in action to help Kato by nuking out the goblins with her lightning, but Kato orders her to stop for a moment as he wants to beat out of them by himself. He said deep in his heart to himself, "If I got defeated now, then lower levels would be nothing more but a pipe dream." Kato created a shield bash and crushed goblins into the wall by rushing. But it's not over yet. Goblins grew more ferocious and tried to break free from Kato's shield bash. Kato was giving his all to prevent the goblins' escape from his shield. Their fight became a competition of strength and survival to see who would go down first. One of the goblins squirmed with the wall so much that it escaped from his shield. He looked at Kato and said in Ooga Booga language, "Last time you got lucky, but this time you will die." He jumped to ambush Kato from its back. Sylphie grabbed its leg and said, "Insolent fool, you are not permitted and are not allowed to interfere in my masterwork," with a spin, crushing him in the wall with such force that the goblin was shattered into tiny pieces like a fruit. Even Kato and the goblin was surprised, as the goblin thought in his Ooga Booga language, "What the hell, man, I didn't sign up for this." As blood started to flow from the goblin's body, Kato looked at Sylphie with surprise. She acted like an innocent child, saying, "I'm not intervening. And I did what you told me to, watch your back, and the positive side is I didn't use any skills at all." He thanked Sylphie for the help. Kato released the goblin from his shield bash and requested Sylphie to let me take off this one by myself. The fight became mano-a-mano gladiator style. Both of them were looking at each other, took their positions, and launched an attack on each other with a wooden sword. Kato successfully blocked the goblin's attack with his shield and landed a direct hit on his head by calculating sword reach and accurate time estimates of attack. After hitting his head, Kato said, "I did it," but he looked at his hand as it was vibrating crazily like he hit a whacked tire after hitting on his head. Goblin looked at him and said in Ooga Booga language, "Was that supposed to hurt? It did just a little bit. Was that really your best?" Kato was having delusions as he was getting panicked after his best strike didn't cause much damage. When he was thinking about retreating, Kato heard Sylphie's voice as she encouraged and told him that he is doing great and you can beat the shit out of him. Hearing her words made Kato encouraged to fight back. Kato thought to show Sylphie that he is a man, right? He took a deep breath, looked at the goblin like a real badass who is going to blow his lights out, and said, "No matter how strong it is, and I don't know if goblins have genders, but I'm going to attack his weak spot according to my calculation." The goblin rushed and jumped to attack Kato. He easily blocked its attack with a shield, looked at the goblin with an intense gaze, and made a counterattack by crushing his balls and nuts with his sword strike. By the attack, goblin lights got blown up after losing its balls. He said in Ooga Booga language that his world and dreams are torn apart, with nerve-crackling pain that ran through his body. After defeat, Kato looked at Goblin and said, "Is it over now, right?" His legs were shaking as he was about to collapse, but Sylphie rushed close and hugged him with her melon chest, making contact with his body like an ARA ARA. "You were amazing out there, master." He looked at Sylphie with happiness and said deep in his heart, "Thank you for believing in me," as he chose Sylphie, goddess of victory and luck, for him. For his hard work, Sylphie rewarded him by spoiling him like an ARA ARA and making him enjoy her thighs and lap as a pillow for today, and he didn't mind if Sylphie knee guards hurt him a little bit. Kato enjoyed and believed in starting a cult for Sylphie as a goddess. After defeating his arch-nemesis Goblin who humiliated him in the dungeon, Kato started to venture more into the second floor of the dungeon to defeat more goblins as he attacked them like Jack the Samurai and defeat them by crushing their nuts and tearing their future dreams and world apart. After defeating the goblin in a flash, Kato looked at him and said, "That's the fourth one. It was hard for me to defeat them first, but now it's easy to kill them one at a time." Sylphie went closer and hugged his master with a cute, cheerful puppy face, praising him for his progress with her big melons making full contact with Kato's body. A strange sensation was blooming in Kato's body whenever Sylphie melons get in contact with his body. To brush this feeling off, he requested her to please not hug him after every fight. Sylphie went in deep shock and asked, "What happens if you collapse again or your 1 billion seizures disease strikes back? Shouldn't I be there to support you with my melons?" Kato comforted her and said, "Don't worry about it. I'm not going to collapse," and even did Prishaka dance, which impressed Sylphie as she was having an expression of wow on her face. After defeating so many goblins, he obtained Goblin Slayer skill, which make him feel proud as a dual wielder inside the dungeon. Sylphie expressed her sadness and said in down tone, "I'm happy that you are becoming strong, but I feel lonely when you don't let me fight alongside you." Keto was dumbstruck after hearing what she said. He replied, "It's not true, your time to shine is coming soon enough, and I will let you fight on deeper floors after I reach level 10. But Sylphie was acting more like a little girl. The reason why Sylphie is not allowed in a battle is that she is an S-rank Valkyrie with God-type power, and letting her loose means goblins massacre if she feels them as a threat. And I don't want to rely too much on her power." So he decided to train himself. As he did basic fighting practice, Sylphie began to copy him and imitate the moves he was doing, even though he had to do titanic poses with her like Rose and Jack. Sylphie interrupted him and said, "I felt the monster's presence close to us, and it's getting close to us." Kato said, "Let's beat him up if it's a goblin." But a skeleton came out and looked at them with a broken jaw and said, "Hello, what do we have here today?" In his Ooga Booga language, Kato looked at Sylphie, and we know what's happened next. Back in high school, Kato was sitting at his desk when his friends Hayato and Shinji showed up and said, "What's up, bro? Still hanging out in the dungeon, and we don't think that you still have learned your lesson after being hospitalized the other day. So, did you get up by slime again, huh?" Kato replied, "No, I'm done hunting slimes now. I hunt goblins as goblin slayers, by breaking their nuts and balls nuts and tearing apart their world and dreams of having babies and family in the future." His friends asked more, "So did you quit being an explorer and did you get revenge on goblins?" Kato agreed and said deep in his heart, "I can't tell anyone that I fainted in the dungeon after seeing a skeleton. After that, Sylphie took care of it with her lightning." His friends said, "Exploration is good, but you can't get a girlfriend if you keep adventuring in the dungeon all the time." Hearing their words, Kato replied, "It might be rude to say this if you guys keep saying that." Suddenly he busted out like a volcano with anger and said to his friends, "You guys are also trash and unpopular like me. So don't act like you guys have girlfriends at all." During their conversation, they hear someone's voice which grabs their attention. They look at her to see what they are doing. Kato can't keep it up to himself and says, "Kastaragi is looking cute today like an angel." His friends said, "Aw shit, here we go again." Kato friends asked, "Weren't you two childhood friends or something?" Kato replied, "Yes, we are kind of." Then his friends asked, "We never saw you talking to her." These words rubbed like salt in his wounds and made him remember his past with Kastaragi when both of them play with each other. "Back then we had a relaxed relationship with each other, and I don't know what happened, but I started to feel nervous around Kastaragi, which ended up creating a distance between us." Kato was about to sleep off in the class when his friend Shinji told him, "By the way, when you were sleeping in class, Kastaragi was looking at you the whole time." Kato became surprised and said, "For real, why are telling me this now?" His friend told him she was looking at Kato with prying eyes and holding off her chest with her hands to control her feelings and with an expression like swallowing up a brittle bug by looking at you. Which shocked Kato as he said, "What?" His friends teased him and rubbed a little bit more salt in his wounds by saying, "Kastaragi-san is popular, you know, and it's not she is interested in some dungeon otaku and you only ended in her sights thanks to your injuries." Kato concluded and thought, "Does it means that Kastaragi hates me now?" Where his friend Hayato pointed, "Haruka is looking here, and her gaze is hurting by looking at you." His friend Hayato decided to tease Kato a little bit more as he calls and says, "Hey Kastaragi, Kato wants to say something to you." He grabbed his friend by the shoulder and said, "Stop, what are you doing? Don't do it." In the past, Kato promised to confess his feelings to Kastaragi, but couldn't do it because lacked the courage within his gut to do it, and decided to slowly improve his private and dungeon life. "I will confess to her once I make it to the 10th floor. After school was over, Kato went to Adventurers Guild to receive his new rank from her bouncy and boing ARA ARA Hitsugaya-san. She congratulated Kato for making it to the stone rank, and here is your new license. Kato was happy as he thought that good things happen too in life. Hitsugaya-san explained to him the perks and benefits of climbing the ranks as an adventurer. She told him that 60% of adventurers fail and quit in the wood rank, and this badge is a symbol of your hard work and persistence. Kato was looking at his badge and admiring his hard work of 2 years, but his happiness and joy were short-lived when Hitsugaya changed the subjects and asked, "Are you aware that eastern area of the dungeon is completely sealed off week ago?" He said, "I hear rumors about and I don't know much about the incident." Hitsugaya explains that the investigation is being carried out. What caused it? Kato was worried that Sylphie caused after nuking the slime. Hitsugaya was direct and asked regarding the incident. She asked in a cold-hearted tone, "That day you were also exploring the first floor eastern part of the dungeon, weren't you? Have you noticed anything strange?" With the suddenly changed atmosphere, Kato tried to make up an excuse to get away. He smiled and said, I wonder if I may have been home on that day. Before he can continue, Hitsugaya interrupted and replied, I have confirmed your name on the list who entered in the eastern part of the dungeon on that day. Somehow the situation was growing worse at every single second, as Kato finds himself in troubled waters when he remembered 24th law of dungeon. Unnecessary damage to dungeon may cause heavy fine and imprisonment for damage. Kato was panicking deep in his heart. He was saying, shit, oh shit, I have to get from here by fooling Hitsugaya out. Because what Sylphie did was an accident, which was his mistake. However, if Sylphie got viewed as a threat, then she would be taken away. Kato took a deep breath and decided to dodge her questions. Hitsugaya's gaze became intense. She cleared her throat with prying eyes looking at him. Kato's face was covered with cold sweat. His body was shaking like he had been put in a fridge, and he blurted out with mob mentality in broken Japanese, also, I was lucky on that day. I went to explore the western part of the dungeon and I didn't notice it. In cold and murderous tones she said, you were lucky on that day as you were exploring the western part of the dungeon and didn't notice anything strange in the eastern area, right? Kato laughed off by sweating coldly and said, that's right, but his clothes were like he came out from the water with them. Hitsugaya continued to pry further like a police officer who is having fun playing with her prey like a toy, and with an intense impression she said, oh, so you are saying only on that day you intentionally entered the eastern part of dungeon but then went to the western side of the dungeon, and what reason caused you to take such a long route? Kato blurted out and foolishly said, for health reasons, especially jogging, you see, which made Hitsugaya more doubtful and suspicious. Her gaze grew more intense, sending shivers down in Kato's spine, with dark vibes and aura emitting from her body. Hitsugaya apologized to him, saying, please excuse my rudeness. Kato was dumbstruck as he witnessed a miracle in front of his eyes. She explained these were orders from superiors to ask and investigate those who entered and exited from the east side of dungeon. Kato sighed in relief as he got lucky. Hitsugaya was back in a good mood and asked, leaving that aside, your injury didn't heal yet, or perhaps you got it from that incident? But Kato, like an idiot, said this injury wasn't from the collapse of the dungeon but from the skeleton that I ran into. He made a fool out of himself in front of Hitsugaya, and she said in a down tone, I see, well, do be careful then. Kato went into shock and he could collapse and went into a coma at any moment by worry, and said in his heart, should I say it or should I not say it? With a cheerful smile, Hitsugaya asked, is something wrong? Kato in fear said no, but Hitsugaya said, that's all I want to know, you can leave now. Kato immediately left, saying, I would be back for now, hasta la vista baby. She replied, I will be waiting for your visit. Hiding her true intention with a smile like Yamiko with prying eyes that set its sights on her prey without letting it escape. She heard someone laughing voice which grabbed her attention. Her collage Nekoda-san called and asked Hitsugaya, senpai, would you let him off the hook so easily without investigating further? She instructed and ordered Nekoda to not report it to superiors for now. Without any second thought, Nekoda agreed and said it would be scary to make an enemy of you. Hitsugaya and Nekoda look at Kato and she asked, that's the bumpkin you mentioned before? Hitsugaya replied, indeed, and asked, what do you think of it? Nekoda expressed, this kid looks suspicious. Oh look, that bumpkin slipped and fell over. With bad luck Kato bumped into Fluffy like Gabriel Iglesias. Fluffy said, after bumping into someone you should apologize, and what's with the awkward look, you brat? Kato immediately apologized to the big guy and said, I'm sorry if I scared you. Fluffy said, you said I'm scared, huh? Nekoda and Hitsugaya were enjoying the scene from afar, only the popcorn was missing for this drama. Nekoda exclaimed and told Hitsugaya that both of them were explorers and they shouldn't quarrel. Hitsugaya said it isn't something to pay attention to. Even though Fluffy was choking Kato in anger and said, are you pretending to be a stone explorer, brat? Nekoda was worried and asked, would your toy be alright if things continued like this? Hitsugaya said, it's alright, my bumpkin is a man and he would be fine. But Nekoda said in a worried tone, your favorite is getting beaten up really badly. But Hitsugaya said, it's fine, this could be used as a trigger to make him stronger. Fluffy dealt his last punch and police came in rushing, saying, hey, you stop there, wanna get banned, huh? That's how Kaio survived to tell his tale and continue adventuring in the dungeon. The next day our survivor Kido with an eye patch went to a dungeon market to get a new weapon for dealing with skeletons. The shop owner welcomed him and said, you got into a fight with another adventurer, huh? Kids sure are energetic these days. The shop owner continued further and said, from my look, you can't fight back, is that correct, and relied too much on your battle points, correct? In a low tone, Kato replied, I'm ashamed to say but it's true. The shop owner suggested putting some strength in those little bones, go and hit gym for muscles, you are being looked down, man. To become a high-rank explorer you need to train your body outside the dungeon, to increase your stats. The shop owner asked what boy you want something to beat the shit out of the skeletons then charge straight and crush them with your big guns. Kato wasn't surprised not even the slightest because whenever you ask advice from the shop owner he will always tell you to solve problems with strength and muscles. The shop owner went back into the shop to pick out the right weapon for Kato and told him to wait here. Kato was worried if this muscle Chad brought some expensive weapon then he couldn't afford it. His eyes gazed at low-grade potions. That cost 100,000 yen which is overly expensive. And thought can it heal instantly or not. Then his eyes gazed at the magic bag which can store items in space dimensions. And cost 10 million yen with taxes for Kato it was an overkill expensive, which made him think if I had one of those then I easily walk around without worrying about bug sprays and magic crystals. But no matter how much I earn I'm still far from buying it, and thought if I get another servant card, I can sell it to get this bag. But is it possible to get another one? He exasperated and said it's like counting a chicken before they hatch with his 1 billion diseases acting up again. And thought miracles only happened once not twice, but can it happen a second time? Chad came back and apologized to keep him waiting, and said here you go take this tungsten rod and said it's a good fit for you since you relied too much on BP correction and even a weakling like you can use it properly. Kato grabbed it and said it's so damn heavy. The shop owner laughed and said that's because it's 3 times more heavier than iron. Kato asked didn't you say it's wrong to rely on BP correction? The shop owner said it depends on my mood what I say and what I don't. But it would be best if you still had BP correction for this one. This big bad boy is heavier than a wooden sword and with the help of its long trajectory, it can do serious damage to your enemy. And if you master it correctly then you don't need much strength to put in it. Kato held the tungsten rod in his hand and could sense the spirit of the metal in his hands and thought it was true that compared to a light wooden sword this bad boy is stronger. Time passed. Kato recovered from his injuries and went straight to dungeon to try this bad boy on monsters. The first test subjects were goblins. They looked at his new weapon and thought by saying in their Ooga Booga language isn't your stick look shiny, big, and different than last time? Like Fred, the Flintstone Kato raises his stick high in the air and bonks the goblin head by crushing his skull with it and that's how the goblin died with Kato's new weapon and technique. After defeating the goblin he sighs a relief and says to himself maybe I should keep a little bit of distance with them. Sylphie was hyped and continued praising his master after watching his new weapon. Kato looked at his tungsten rod with pride and thought the shop owner was right about this and even I can use it with BP correction and this bad boy had great damage too. And these goblins were good guinea pigs for testing it out. As took pride in his weapon Kato began to thought was is it a good purchase decision right? When he got a flashback about what happened during purchase time, when he told Chad that he only had a budget of 200,000 yen. Like a salesman, the shop owner looked at him and said your budget is 200,000 right? I will give you a big discount with a high-grade potion as a regular customer. Kato can't resist the temptation from him without knowing the truth, but when checked on the internet after buying it, he found a rod similar to it at a lower price and the potion was already used and empty. Sylphie called Kato and said the enemy is getting close to us. Kato became alarmed and took a fighting stance. He was shocked when saw how skeletons are peeping on him. They look at him and said in their Ooga Booga language bro may we come in to attack you. Sylphie whispered to Kato and said master these guys are peeping at us instead of attacking what should we do? Should we wait for them or should we attack them? Kato was freaking out watching that he had to deal with 3 of them. Watching Kato trembling in fear Sylphie said there is no need to be afraid of them and their numbers. If the worst case happens then I would electrocute and blast them with my lightning. Kato looked at him and said do you think I'm afraid of something? Skeleton's patience ran out as they couldn't wait any longer and said in their Ooga Booga language we are coming bro now die from taking your sweet time with girls and ignoring us. They rushed to attack them. Kato came prepared for this day. He was developing his mental strength and resistance against scary monsters by watching The Nun, Conjuring 2, and other horror movies and doing the shoulder presses with his prideful tungsten rod for this day. He ordered Sylphie to get back today. He was going to prove I'm a real man in the dungeon by showing his real strength and special move that he perfected. As the skeletons were missing their nuts and balls Kato spun like a Beyblade and launched his special move Tungsten Tornado which smashed every single skeleton with his spinning action. An attack so deadly with spinning power that even the foe trembles and shivers against it. After smashing the last enemy Kato's spins were so violent that the rod even smashed into the dungeon wall, which caused pain in his hand. Sylphie was worried that by watching Kato in pain she said master and was ready with her melons to grab Kato with them. He said I'm fine. The battle was not over yet. More skeletons came in rushing after hearing some strange noise. After getting surrounded, he asked himself why are there so many of them. One skeleton went close to devour Kato. He began trying to eat his brain first by saying in his Ooga Booga language, boy, your time has come, now die. Even Kato thought, is it true that today is the day that I die? Will I die without an ARA or seeing my little ones in the future? His mind said, now wait a minute, just what did you say? Just look at the men. These guys are not even scarier at all. Even the Ring movie girl did a better job than these guys. The guys are just playing and poking fun with us, and bonking on Sylphie head like she a drum or something like this for them. One skeleton got closer to Kato and said, boy, scared now, die in fear. Kato let his Excalibur answer their question by smashing them into pieces. Fighting with them made him realize these guys are not scary at all. Kato remembers the old man's advice, as he was right about these skeletons. He did the same thing that the old man told him, to flex them, boy, your muscles power, to defeat the skeletons, crushing them like trash pieces and bonking their heads with his prideful Excalibur stick. After being done with skeletons, he begins to pray. Watching him pray, Sylphie, what are you doing, master? Kato replied something like a prayer for these poor lost souls to find peace and ARA in their afterlife, so now may you all rest in peace. Watching him pray, Sylphie began to imitate him and begin to pray like him. During prayer, Kato noticed something that grabbed his attention. It was a slime looking down on them from the top. Both of them wondered and looked at the slime in question. He looked at Sylphie and asked, how long has it been there? Sylphie looked at him and replied, I don't know, as that thing slipped under from her monster detection radar. Taking a closer look, they saw the slime had metallic glowing skin and it was sleeping without making a twitch, as it didn't think Kato and Sylphie posed any threat to him. For Kato, it is a good opportunity when he thinks that slime can drop anything rare. But the position is a little bit problematic. And it would be difficult to catch it if I let this sleepy guy flee now. Looking at a golden hen in front of them, they began to strategize of how to defeat it. Kato thought about nuking it with Sylphie lightning, but it would destroy the rare item that slime would drop, and it could be a new ARA equipment. Looking at them strategizing to defeat him, slime began to wake up and started to jump crazily to warm up like Goku. He began to shout for his new super slime transformation, and it worked. The slime grew lips on its face, looked down at its enemies, and smiled after getting a cheat skill. For Kato, it's a miracle to saw and encounter another slime. But the slime wasn't merciful, as it began to attack, spitting on its enemies as it considered them weak and trash. Kato finds it gross and dodges barely by its attack. What's more shocking is that the slime spit even melted the dungeon floor. The slime wasn't spitting but using its cheat skill to create and throw up highly concentrated acid, to melt and destroy anything by acids. The slime didn't stop there, and got cocky with its new cheat skill, and began to throw acid from its mouth like a kid with infinite ammo and a Gatling gun. Kato shouted like a Wild West sheriff and said to slime, stop messing around. But the slime was having fun with his acid Gatling gun. His strong acidic saliva began to melt the entire dungeon floor and the skeletons that Kato worked hard to defeat. Sheriff Kato becomes mad as his all hard work is being wasted. The magic crystals that he worked hard to get are being destroyed in front of his eyes, for it was nothing more than naught. But Kato was furious and burning in rage when his hard work was gone. He looks at slime with his enraged eyes, and rushes to it by saying, I will shove my prideful tungsten Mjolnir down in your damn mouth. Like a caring ARA, Sylphie called him and said, be careful, master. Instead of going into Gatling gun mode, slime switches to sniper mode and throws its acidic spit by aiming at someone. He sees its flying acid spit and says, where you are aiming at an idiot, but becomes surprised when he is aiming at Sylphie and she is in danger. He rushes back shouting his name and immediately goes close to Sylphie to protect her, by shielding her with his body. She wanted to say something, but Kato replied in anger and worry to shut up and stay down, and thought about buying that low-grade potion in the shop even if he got bankrupt, and said, I'm such an idiot, I could at least heal a serious injury with that potion. Slowly he opened his eyes in wonder when he couldn't feel the burn from the acid. He turns around and sees that some magical barrier protects him and Sylphie. Focusing seriously on her barrier in anger, she only said, I won't forgive those who hurt my master.